My name is Brendan and I'll be leading this training today. All right, so let's get started with the training. The intended audience for this training is for IntelleCheck end users and administrators. The goals of this training are to demonstrate the functionality of the IntelleCheck interface and to inform administrators of the options that are available for them. The objectives of this training are to describe IntelleCheck and its purpose, to describe the different jobs that can be completed using the end user functions, go over some common troubleshooting issues encountered while using IntelleCheck, and lastly, provide an overview of the options that are available for the administration of IntelleCheck. So let's begin with a description of IntelleCheck and how it works. IntelleCheck is a web-enabled tool that allows an end user to access IntelleCheck with a web browser. Through IntelleCheck, we can print custom checks, print and email direct deposit devices, create PositivePay files, process electronic refunds through BankMobile, send copies of these documents to a third-party imaging system, and to create reports to investigate the status of your checking system. Right, so I'm gonna launch IntelleCheck right here. We're gonna navigate to the Maps eLauncher page using a web browser. Okay. Right, so this is the URL that I use to access all of the eVisions applications. Your Maps administrator will provide the URL that is used at your institution. It can be saved as a favorite or treated like any other website. First, we will select the product that we want to use, in this case, IntelleCheck. Let's click right here. So in this training, I'm using Google Chrome. eVisions products can also be launched from Firefox or Internet Explorer or Edge. Here we have the IntelleCheck main menu, where we will start all of the end user tasks. In the bottom left corner of the screen is information about IntelleCheck, including a link to support. You can change passwords. There are release notes and the version number. Be sure to contact your administrator about your organization's password policy before making a password change. The release notes show all of the changes between versions of IntelleCheck. Over here on the right-hand side, we have the help button. This will become active and clickable in certain areas of IntelleCheck. You can also access this function by pressing the F1 key on your keyboard, as so. Okay, so this links to our website, help, which may contain more detailed information on how to use a particular feature in IntelleCheck. So next, we will describe the different jobs that can be completed using the end user function. Processing payments through the Process Pending menu is the most common task used with IntelleCheck. Prior to entering the Process Pending menu, a normal check processing would need to be completed for your payments to be ready to print. These processes include PHP Checkle, FabCheckP, and Farter. These processes are modified from the Elution baseline version to be able to appear in IntelleCheck. So if you run the Elution baseline version of these processes, they will not appear in IntelleCheck. I want to add to not run PHP Update or FabCheck until after you have finished printing and emailing your payments. These processes will clear the temporary tables and will prevent you from going back and making changes in the event of an error. Okay, we'll go back to IntelleCheck. So we will click the Process Pending button and begin. The login information should be provided to you by your Maps administrator and is dependent on your institution. You will also need to select a connection. Your Maps administrator will provide you with the connection to use. If you do not see the connection that you should be using, you may need to click the refresh button for it to appear. Note that you must have your username and password entered prior to refreshing. These credentials are the same ones that will be used to log into all of the IntelleCheck menus. Once you are in the Process Pending menu, select the account that you want to process payments for from the drop-down list. All right, let's sign in. From this screen, you can choose the batch to process after selecting the account type. Okay, and here you can select multiple batches by using either the Control or Shift keys. To select non-adjacent items, we use Control, and to select adjacent items, we use Shift. We also have the Select All and Select None buttons at the top. Okay, for this training, I will select all. Then we hit the next button. All right, so this is the payment selection screen, and it allows you to select payments from the selected batches. The default column sort order places the highest priority on the left and the lowest priority on the right. We can drag and drop the different headings. The payments can also be ordered by clicking on the column headings. IntelleCheck should remember your choices, so you only have to do this one time. You can select multiple payments in the same manner that the batches were selected by using either the Shift or Control keys. We can also do select all and select none. After selecting the payments to process, click the next button in the bottom right-hand corner. All right, so this is the selection summary screen. Here we can review the payments selected to confirm the number of each type and that the totals are in fact correct. On the processing screen, we define our processing options for the different types of payments. The reason for process is automatically filled in with process payments for the first time. And then below that, we have 5 tabs. First, we have the checks tab is where we will process checks. Your process options are no processing and print. No processing is where check records will not be processed at all, and print is where all check records will be printed and set as processed. When printing checks, you must specify the printer to use. The printers you have available are configured by your administrator. You may have permissions to print to local and/or network printers. When printing a large number of checks, you may want to use a load balancing. Simply select multiple printers and IntelleCheck will distribute the print job accordingly. Be sure to select a printer with microtoner to print checks. You may also print file copies of checks with this option right here. Select the checkbox in printer. For file copies, you may select a printer that does not use a microtoner. We can also create PDF file copies from this menu right down here. In doing so, we have 2 options when creating a PDF. We can do either individual files, which is 1 file for each payment, or a single file, which is 1 file for all the payments in the run. And lastly, we have the option to password protect the PDF file. And if we select no processing, this allows us to preview the payment run before processing. And you may choose a no processing option and select create PDF of file copies. The next tab is the direct deposits tab. This tab allows you to process direct deposit advices. To prevent wasting maker ink on direct deposits, select specific printers that do not have it. File copies and PDFs of file copies work just the same as with the checks tab. Okay, so the direct deposit tab has additional processing options. Like checks, there's no processing and print only. Option number 1, no processing, will not process any direct deposit advices. Option number 2, print only will print all of the direct deposits and then set them as processed. 3, we have email only, which will email an advice and set the records as processed for those with an email address. All other records will be processed. Number 4, email then print, will attempt to email an advice to records with an email address. Any direct deposits without an email address will be printed instead of emailed. Please note that this option does not verify whether or not the email delivery is successful. All records are then set to be processed at the end. Number 5, we have validate email then print, which will also attempt to email an advice to records with an email address. However, any email that fails to reach the recipient will be printed. Any remaining records with no email address will also be printed. All of the records will then be set as processed. Please note that this option usually takes much longer than the email then print option due to the validation step. And then number 6, lastly, we have email then print, which will email advices to records with an email address and print advices for all records. All of the records will then be set as processed. So let's click email only. The permission to send emails must be granted by your administrator. When an email option is selected, the email properties and scheduling controls become active. Over here, let's click on the email properties. So the email properties section allows you to change the subject, body, and add additional attachments. So for the schedule delivery on, allows you to schedule the emails to be delivered at a specific date and time. This option is great to process records now, but schedule the advices to email on a later date or time. Next, the BankMobile tab is where you go to finish processing BankMobile payments. You can send the payment file to BankMobile and enter print notices and file copies of electronic payments. You would then be prompted, are you sure you want to send the selected payments to BankMobile? Please note that if you do not send the payment file to BankMobile, the payments will remain in the process pending menu. Usually there is a PositivePay tab if you have it set up. So the PositivePay file may be created at the time of processing. The payments selected that have not been sent to PositivePay yet will be included in the file when the payments are processed. And then lastly, we have the reporting tab. After most IntelleCheck tasks, you have the option to print a report after completion. All right, so let's close out of here. Next, we're going to talk about the reprocessing menu. We will click on the reprocess button and log in. Once you're in the reprocess menu, select the account that you would like to work with. In this case, we're going to select MN. Okay, you can narrow this return results by specifying a date range, check number range, payee name, or document type. For this training, I'm going to select the default to return all checks that have been processed. The payment selection screen allows you to select payments just like in process pending. I'm going to select 4 payments that are not voided. Then we will hit next. This is the selection summary screen. We can review the payments selected to confirm the number of each type and that the totals are correct. This configuration screen is similar to the screen in process pending menu. The only difference is the reason for reprocess is not automatically filled in. The reason for reprocess is a required field. In the event of an audit, the auditor can see the reason for reprocessing. Maybe there was a paper jam or a student washed their checks. I will enter paper jam. After entering a reason and selecting printer options, the process button becomes available. We will then click process to reprocess the payments. Next, we have the void button. Let's click on that and enter. Once you are in the void menu, select the account that you would like to avoid payments for from the drop-down list. Again, you can narrow the return results by specifying a date range, check number range, payee name, or document type. On the payment screen, we can select the payment that we will want to avoid. And now we click the void button. Notice that if you have PositivePay set up, it will prompt you to add this entry to the next PositivePay run. A PositivePay run generates a file that contains details of legitimate checks that can be cashed. Since a check is being voided, you may want to inform the bank about the voided check by adding it to the next PositivePay run. We will discuss PositivePay more in the next section. So let's click on void. Again, if you have PositivePay set up, you will then be prompted to add this entry to the next PositivePay run. Please note this important fact. If you void a check in IntelleCheck, it does not void the checking banner. Consequently, if you do not void the checking banner, the total in your banner database will remain unchanged even though the check was voided. Always make sure to void checks in both places. All right, next we're going to cover the PositivePay section. PositivePay is a process where a file is sent to the bank to prevent check fraud. The file has information about your checks so the banks can verify that the checks being deposited are legitimate. A PositivePay file can be created by selecting PositivePay on the main menu or during the time of processing. So all right, let's click on the PositivePay button, log in using your credentials, and select the account that we would like to work with from the drop-down list. For the selection method, we have 3 options. First, we have all processed checks that have not been sent to PositivePay yet. Second, select from batches that have checks yet to be sent to PositivePay. And third, select from all existing batches of checks. As checks or batches are selected, the count and amounts under results adjust accordingly. To create the PositivePay file, you would click the Generate button. Okay, we are going to click generate. Here I am prompted for an administrative password. This means an IntelleCheck administrator set up a password to approve the file generation. They can also set up passwords for other actions like processing, process pending, reprocess, or void. To proceed with the file generation, have the appropriate user enter the password. Okay, now we're able to generate the PositivePay file. Next, we will talk about generating reports. Let's click on the reports button, log in, and select the account that we would like to work from. In the report section, we have 7 different reports that can be run. Number 1, we have the actions audit, which allows the administrator to view actions users have initiated in IntelleCheck. For example, they can see who printed or reprocessed checks. Number 2, the audit control report shows a list of the audit control numbers generated for each check printed. Number 3, check register shows the status of payment batches. Number 4, summary report prints a summary of selected batches. Such information is the number of an amount for each type of record. Number 5, this is the void check register, provides a list of voided checks. Number 6, check register invoice is useful for viewing status of statement batches. And lastly, number 7, we have the user permissions report, which displays the permissions for all users for the selected account. The most common report is a check register report, so let's take a closer look at that. So in this section, we can select our batches and select a sort order. If you have a very large number of batches available, you can use the start and end date selection fields to only display batches from a certain day and range. Okay, to select the sort order, you can check the override box below, ordered by options, and sort the fields. Okay, next we can click preview for a preview screen of the check register support. This report shows you individual checks and the status for each batch that was selected. We can zoom in and out by using these buttons at the top. We can scroll through the pages by clicking on the thumbnails. We can also use the arrows at the top to scroll as well. The single arrow moves pages one at a time, whereas the double arrows move to the beginning or the end. We can go directly to a page by entering in the page number. We can also search text by using the binocular button. We can also print and save the reports right here. These are standard reports. eVisions does have a reporting software that will create custom reports called Argos. For more information about the software, please contact your account executive. Next, we will talk about the BankMobile menu. IntelleCheck integrates with BankMobile disbursements to enable colleges and universities to quickly and efficiently distribute financial aid and payroll disbursements electronically. Setting this up does not require any special IT projects. The BankMobile menu allows you to manage cardholders. Click the BankMobile button and log in using your credentials. We can narrow down the results by specifying a date range, name or ID type. I'm going to accept the defaults to return all cardholders. Okay, so now all cardholders are displayed below. Only those with an enabled status will have payments processed by BankMobile. To resend the card, select the user with an enabled status and click the resend button. Next, we will go over some troubleshooting tips that may answer many common issues. If while trying to process checks, the message "there are no payments to print" pops up, the first thing we do is we check the log file and verify that the log file says EVI next to release at the top. This confirms that the eVisions version is being used and not the banner baseline version. Next, we would like to confirm that lines were being written to the list file in the log file. If lines were written, please check with your administrator to make sure that you have the proper permissions for the bank code. Not having proper permissions will produce this message when there are payments to print. If you continue to have issues, please contact eVisions for further assistance. If there were no lines written to the list file, something may have went wrong during a random process. Verify if the update process was ran after the last check run, either the FABCheck A or PHP update process. Then confirm that the invoices and banner are ready to process. We have now come to the end of the end user portion of IntelleCheck. The remainder of the training will focus on the administrative side. If you are an end user and not involved in the administration of IntelleCheck, you can drop off at this point. However, you may find the presented information in the next section useful. Having an understanding of the functions and tasks handled by administrators will enable better communication between the two roles. Now let's continue on to the administration section of IntelleCheck. So let's select administration. After selecting administration, there are two buttons, configuration and database. By selecting database, you can install initial IntelleCheck objects, modify the database, and upgrade the database version. The configuration button is used for the administration of IntelleCheck. All right, so let's click on that and log in. Right, if this is your first time logging into the configuration menu, use the eVisions username. This can be used for the initial configuration to set proper permissions for your users. You will also need to choose a connection. Your Maps administrator will provide you with a connection to use. If you do not see the connection that you should be using, you may need to click the refresh button for it to show up. Note that you must have your username and password entered prior to refreshing. Okay, once we're in, we will see the configuration page where we will start all of the administrative tasks. Here at the top of the screen, you will see the import and export buttons. The import button is used to import layout changes that may have been made by eVisions. The export button is used to export the current database elements to an ICC file. An ICC file is the exported file with various IntelleCheck element configurations. When importing one or more ICC files, they must be imported in the order from oldest to newest. All right, we'll take a look at the account section next. Once you're in the account menu, select the account that you would like to work with. In this case, MN. We see the custom and search and replace fields eVisions has created for you the account code. Any changes will be imported with a new ICC file that eVisions sends you. The middle of the screen right here has printer security. Here we can adjust the printers that are accessible to users. The first checkbox allows users to print to printers installed on their machines. Note that the user must also be granted permission to utilize this functionality by the IntelleCheck administrator. The second box allows maps printing. The printer or printers should be selected to appear for the users to print. At the bottom of the screen, we have auditing commands that are stored in the auditing tables. Next, we have the macro button, which should only be used while being assisted by an eVisions analyst. A macro is a file that generally contains specific information or graphics on a check. The next section we have is users, where we grant individual and administrative privileges to IntelleCheck users. In the left navigation pane is a list of users that have been set up and defined in the Maps server. In the middle pane, we have two tabs. We have Global and By Account. The Global tab is used for management of administrators in IntelleCheck. To add an administrator, select the user from the left pane and move them to the middle pane. In doing so, we have a few options. We can double click, drag and drop, or using the blue arrow keys. To select multiple users, hold Shift to select adjacent users and Control to select non-adjacent users, just like in the payment selection screen. Control, non-adjacent, Shift, adjacent. Okay. So when adding a new user, they are automatically assigned administrator rights. Permissions for IntelleCheck administrator or BankMobile administrator can be set or removed here. To remove an administrator, move the user from the middle pane to the left pane by dragging or using the blue arrow. The By Account tab, right here, is used to grant permissions to individual users. First, select the account code from the drop-down menu. Granting permissions to an account is similar to adding an administrator. Move the user from the left pane to the middle pane. The new user will be granted permission to process checks and direct deposits by default. Additional permissions may be granted by checking the boxes. Let's go check on some additional permissions. Note that printing locally is a permission that must be given and can be used when setting up printer security. This is a useful feature because different printers can be utilized for file copies and check printing. You can check the permissions one by one or by using the check uncheck all button at the top. Also, a user can be restricted to running only specific reports, which are defined right down here. Next, we'll take a look at the PositivePay section. From the PositivePay menu, we'll select the layout that we would like to work with. Okay, so eVisions will create this module upon purchase, and it should only be modified under the direction of an eVisions analyst. Here is where we associate the account codes to the layout. If you have added a new bank code that uses the same PositivePay layout, this is where you will associate the account code to it. The Output Options tab is where we decide where to save the PositivePay file that is generated. The file can be saved locally or onto a network drive. Note that the network path must also be enabled on the map server. Okay, so the a map script right here can be executed after the file has been created. This script can be anything your IT department can create, a secure FTP, or a call to a custom program for sending PositivePay files to the bank. Each bank has its own requirements for delivering PositivePay files, so your IT staff should contact the bank for information on creating the script. This is a script that cannot be created by eVisions, but we do have documentation that can assist you in doing so. Next, we have the email button. The email layout will be set up for you by eVisions. There will, however, be some customization that administrators will need to make. For example, in the header tab, the from field should be changed and the reply to field should also be changed. In IntelleCheck 3.5.1 and up also allows HTML content in the body of emails. You can select that here by either selecting HTML or plain text. The attachment section allows you to modify the name of the direct deposit advice delivered, set up a password for the PDF, and add any additional attachments. In the body tab, you can modify the subject body of the email. If you have selected HTML for the content, you will need to use HTML tags for formatting. The server tab is where you will select the email server to deliver the emails. This server should be set up by your Maps administrator in the Maps configuration tool. Please make sure to select the appropriate server for the emails from IntelleCheck to be sent through. Lastly, we have the Associate Accounts tab. This allows the administrator to select the account codes that will have emails associated with them. You can also test email layouts by using this little green play button. Depending on which field your email is saved under, enter your email address here and click OK. You should receive a sample email of how it worked. Next, we have the password section. This section can be used to add an extra layer of security to certain areas of IntelleCheck. Earlier in our training, we were required to enter an administrative password to generate a PositivePay file. A supervisor may want to know every time that an employee generates the file. So this is where that password was set up. All right, so let's make a new password for Void by clicking on the green plus button. And I will type in training. So next we will select the area to password protect. I will select Void. Now we will fill in our password and press Tab or Enter. We would then be prompted to enter our password again. We then select the bank code that we would like the password to be associated with. All right, so after doing so, the void area now requires an administrative password. Next, we'll go over the archive section of IntelleCheck. This section of IntelleCheck is used for archiving old checks. This is an important function because it keeps IntelleCheck running optimally. As an example, the finance department might archive their records at the end of the fiscal year, and the accounts payable department might archive their records at the end of the academic year. So let's click on archive and go in. First, we will select the account code that we want to archive. When selecting payments to archive, there are two options. We can do records prior to a specific date and select the batches. When saving the archive files to a flat file, we have the options of either XML or PDF. Using the XML option will require an XML viewer to view or print the files, but the XML format requires significantly less space to store. If we go with the PDF option, it's a much easier format to view, but PDFs are typically 4 times larger than XML. For this training, we'll go with Archive Payments PDF by unchecking XML for this training. Okay, so once we select PDF, the PDFs can be archived in 2 ways. We can either do the individual file, which will create a PDF for every payment, or the single file, which will create 1 PDF for all the payments being archived. And below that, we have 2 options. We have options to archive audit details and to purge archive records. Be aware that after purging records from the database, only file copies of these checks that you've archived will be available. And lastly, we have the encrypt data. The checks contain sensitive information, and this option allows us to protect that information. Each time the file is accessed, the password will be required. Make sure that the password is not forgotten or lost. IntelleCheck does not store this information, thus it cannot be restored. So next we have the BankMobile section. Typically only one BankMobile configuration will exist, and it will be selected by default. Okay, so in the BankMobile section, we have 2 tabs, Queries and Configuration. The first tab is Queries. BankMobile uses SQL statements to get user information from the Banner database. The results can then be used to issue cards. So by hitting the preview button, this executes the SQL statement and returns our results. From the results, we select the students to enable and click Deliver to create a file. If we click the Query Builder button, a window will pop up to enter general information about the query. Hovering over an entry field will provide a hint for the field at the bottom of the window. All the parameters entered in the Query Builder window are used to create the SQL script. So in the Configuration tab, we select accounts that we want to associate with the layout. Next, we have Imaging, where we can transfer file copies to a third-party imaging system. The way imaging works is PDF files are created and saved to a specific directory on a server. The images are then uploaded to the imaging system using the command to execute batch file. Let's click on that. So from the imaging menu, select the configuration that you would like to work with from the drop-down list. So now we have 2 tabs. We have Parameters and Associated Accounts. Under Parameters, the administrator has the option to force imaging each time the payments are processed. We also have the option to select the document types to image. The next item is the command to execute. This is where we enter the name of the batch file that your IT staff can create. The script can FTP the file to a certain location or perform any other functionality that the IT staff sees necessary. If the batch file requires any parameters, they can be entered in the command parameters box. This is a script that cannot be created by eVisions, but we do have documentation that can assist you into developing these scripts. We also have the option to disable PDF encryption. The second tab, which is the Associate Accounts tab, allows the administrator to select what accounts will have imaging associated with them. Then lastly, we have the Settings button, which should only be used when directed by an eVisions technical support resource. Okay, so now we have come to the end of the training. Before I close, I would like to mention the Maps Administrator training. If you're a Maps Administrator, you may find it useful. It will show you how to set up resources such as connections, users, and printers. Also, eVisions now has the ability to add the United States Postal Service IntelleCheck mail barcodes to the mail portion of checks and direct deposit devices. These barcodes allow you to take advantage of mailing discounts provided to USPS customers. For additional information, please refer to our IntelleCheck 3.5.3 release guide. Please submit a help desk case if you would like eVisions to add intelligent mail barcodes to your payment layouts. Thank you for attending, everyone, and have a great day.